Welcome to our presentation. Let me first introduce the flow of the presentation. The presentation will begin reviewing the known facts that are given in the case with no assumptions. Then, the representative of the plaintiff, the parents, and the defendant, the Hong Kong government, would make the averment respectively, with the main focus on whether the duty of care is owed to the plaintiff and other elements of torts of negligence. At the end, a logical conclusion based on all arguments will be deduced to determine if the government is responsible for the death of Sophia. Sophia Chan was a 6-year-old Hong Kong citizen with respiratory problems, occasionally suffering from acute asthma attacks. Her family had gone on a vacation to Phuket, Thailand, for an unknown period of time, during which Sophia suffered no difficulties in breathing. 3 days after the family's return to Hong Kong, Sophia died of asthma. The cause was traced to the intake of dried apricots bought in Thailand and brought back to Hong Kong 6 hours before the asthma attack. The apricots that Sophia had eaten are produced by Lucky Trading Company, a company based in Hong Kong.
In Chapter 132H, Colouring Matter in Food Regulations, the government disallows the application of sulfur dioxide to retain desirable fresh meat colour, for reasons as per quoted. The chemical sulfur dioxide may induce allergic reactions such as asthma attacks, headache, and nausea. This shows that the government understands the harmful effects of sulfur dioxide on general public, especially on people suffering from asthma and other respiratory problems. However, the use of sulfur dioxide is allowed as a preservative of the dried apricots in Hong Kong, regulated by the Preservatives in Food Regulation, Schedule 1 of Chapter 132BD, without a clear explanation of the effect of sulfur dioxide. While the standards of application of sulfur dioxide on food may vary from fresh meat to dried apricots, the potentially fatal effects of sulfur dioxide do not. By not banning sulfur dioxide outright, people in Hong Kong may still be fatally injured, and the government should at least explain the health risks of sulfur dioxide to patients suffering from respiratory diseases. And as Sophia is an asthmatic and belongs to this group of patients, the government hence owes a duty of care to her immediate family, guardians, and herself. According to Schedule 1 of the Preservatives in Food Regulations in the Public Health and Municipal Service Ordinance, the maximum permitted level of sulfur dioxide in food product dried apricot is 2000 ppm. In other words, the ordinance allows the additive sulfur dioxide to be present in dried apricots as the dried apricots concerned, in this case, as long as it is within the safety limit of 2000 ppm, a level deemed to be safe to the majority of the general public. However, this argument does not stand in this case, as the government understands the potentially fatal effects of sulfur dioxide and continues to allow its use instead of banning it outright. It has allowed the injuring of a certain group of the general public. In accordance to the thin skull rule, it has caused a fatal injury to Sophia, and the government is liable for negligence. The government has the responsibility to monitor the air quality in Hong Kong and provides advice to people who may be affected. It should not be only limited to the Air Pollution Index, which gives a general view of the quality of air, but also the information of the air pollutant and its hazardous effect. Past air pollution statistics should be provided to citizens who have been out of Hong Kong for a certain period of time, avoiding any unawareness of the change of air quality, which may cause lethal consequences. The failure in the notification of the adverse air quality definitely deteriorates the health condition of Sophia. If the government has exerted its full responsibility, perhaps Sophia would not have passed away.
The government agrees that it is the public's right to know the injurious effect of sulfur dioxide, but would also like to raise the fact that the group particularly susceptible to damage from these effects should also have responsibility to find out and avoid these potential hazards. It would be unreasonable for the government to be responsible for directly informing every single person of all health risks the moment they contract the illness or even before they contract the affliction. At most, the government should only be liable for not providing such information to the best of its ability if it has not done so already. As such, regarding information dissemination of the potential threat of additives, the government has provided the public with adequate information. This can be seen in the Center for Safety website and publications, where guidelines and information in various formats are available to the general public to educate them about the use of food additives and their potential harm to human beings. Hence, in conclusion of this point, the government has not breached its duty of care, if any, to inform the general public regarding the health risks of additives in the dried apricots. On to the next point regarding inconsistent standards. Although the government understands the health risks posed by sulfur dioxide as preservatives to people with respiratory problems, it has not foreseen that the additive would be the cause of a fatal injury to a person. As such, it had advocated levels of 2000 ppm, a level which is safe for a vast majority of citizens under its care. In the case if the government knows of the risk of sulfur dioxide triggering a potential fatal asthma attack in asthmatics, it would be liable for such cases whereby the dried apricot was purchased in Hong Kong. However, in this case, the trigger for the asthmatic attack was apricots bought from Thailand. It was produced in Hong Kong for the purposes of export and sale within Thailand and other countries. And in such a case, Section 7 of Chapter 132 BD, Preservatives in Food Regulation, states that the regulation shall not apply for articles of food meant for export purposes. As to the air pollution problem, the air continuously flows and circulates around the world, and it is impossible for the HKSAR government to owe the sole responsibility for this air pollution, as the emission of pollutants may not come only from Hong Kong, but may also be from mainland China or other countries of the world. The Hong Kong Observatory announces air pollution index every day and utilizes various channels like TV news and the internet to warn the public should the air quality be unsuitable for those suffering from respiratory syndrome to go outdoors. The general public, again, has their own responsibility to gather the information to protect themselves from any kind of harm.
Having listed both sides' arguments, the following part consists of our group's collective deductions and decisions. In terms of reasonable foreseeability of harm, the preservative in dried apricots is not expected to cause fatal effects on anyone, given that the ppm level is in the safety range. Both the government and the parent had not foreseen death owing to the intake of dried apricots. An unlucky coincidence does not impose any legal responsibility to anyone. If there is any party who should be responsible, it should first and foremost be the parent, in regards to the contributory negligence, before any other party who is claimed to owe the duty of care. In other words, the majority of negligence lies with the parents of the deceased, who could have avoided the incident should they have exercised careful scrutiny on the food products before allowing their 6-year-old daughter to eat it. We have also given much thought as to whether Section 7 of Chapter 132 BD is reasonable, as it absolves the Hong Kong government of any responsibility to do with products it exports, including products which may potentially be bought by Hong Kong citizens. As it is not reasonably foreseeable that Hong Kong citizens will be the main consumers of the end products sold overseas, systems in place to check imports, the difficulty for the Hong Kong government to enforce its standards on overseas manufacturers, and the high likelihood that other countries have similar standards in place, we feel that the exclusion clause, which is Section 7 of Chapter 132 BD, is reasonable, and that the government should not be liable for any talks regarding exported articles of food. Another consideration is that the HKSAR is the public authority in Hong Kong. The role of policy on duty of care plays a role in the determination of whether the duty of care is owed, even if from time to time the government makes mistakes in the exercise of providing comprehensive information to all citizens, but it is not to be doubted that it applies its best endeavors to the performance of it. To wrap up, it is just unreasonable to conclude that the government does not owe the duty of care to Sophia's death.